Welcome to one of our bonus modules for Mastering Etsy Print on Demand, the completely free course that I've created to help you be your own product boss from anywhere in just pockets of time. Grounded by years of small business experience, expert testing because I never preach what I haven't practiced, and crafted to suit anyone, no matter what part of the journey you're on, my goal is to show you the ropes, help you build out a strategic approach for print-on-demand success, and give you a results-based grip on driving sales using the SimplyPod framework that I've developed and that this entire free course is based off of. In case we haven't met yet, hey there, friend. My name is Mandy. I'm a busy Midwest boy mama, former HR director turned full-time handmade small business entrepreneur, and builder of print-on-demand shops that altogether have reached almost six figures in less than a year, all while not having to touch a single product or ship anything out to a customer myself. I'm obsessed with sharing knowledge that simplifies the Etsy print-on-demand process so that truly anyone can feel empowered to start their own journey. In this bonus module, we'll be walking through an entire shop setup, everything from my own personal business recommendations to getting ready for Etsy, and then diving into setting up a shop, integrating it with my preferred printing partner of Printify, creating your very first product listing, and then understanding what happens when an order comes through. Remember, I've been very intentional about the order of these modules because there are key shop areas that I want you to make sure you master and get right first. So now that we've taken a look at all of that in previous modules, let's get ready to dive in and make sure you're watching all the way through because we'll walk through the entire setup of a new shop together. But first, I want to establish some initial business setup recommendations. First things first, because remember, we are running this as a business. So some business basics, and again, these are my recommendations. First, register your business in your state. You don't have to register as an LLC. You can register as a sole proprietor, but either way, I'd highly recommend that you register with your state so that you are established as a business and will then have access to benefits as a business. And then I also recommend that as you're getting ready to open your Etsy shop, have 2 to 3 Etsy shop names in mind. It's okay if these are slightly different than your official business name if you decide to register. This is just for what the public will see as your shop name in Etsy. Oftentimes your first choice is taken, and so I don't want you to get stuck in that step when you are setting up your shop. And as a reminder, I am not, nor have I ever been, a tax expert, and I don't give legal advice. These are my recommendations, and I definitely recommend that you consult a professional if you do have questions about your own situation. Next are some basics with business finances. Again, these are my recommendations of how I've set things up for my shop to keep things running smoothly and well tracked. The first is to file to be tax exempt as a business. Once you register, this becomes an option. And I say this because once you are able to be established as a business and be tax exempt, the purchases that you make, whether it's through Printify or any other print provider, you are able to then order those and have your orders go through as tax exempt so that you're not being charged tax on these orders, because then you would be considered a reseller. The other recommendation is to open a business credit card if you feel comfortable doing so. I do this personally to keep all of my business expenses in one place. So it's what I have connected to my Etsy shop for Etsy payments, and it's also what I have connected to my print provider so that they can charge my orders and shipping to that credit card, and it's all in one place and much easier to reconcile. With that, I also recommend opening a separate business checking account so that it is separate from your personal finances. This allows you to keep all of your business income in one place and organized. And finally, I highly recommend that you start tracking business income and expenses early. The sooner you can stay on top of these, the better you'll be able to understand your financial health of your business and make sure that you're making a profit in this and that you're managing your expenses well. One of the ways that I do this personally, and I have made this available to my Patreon Rockstar member tier as well, is by having this ultimate income, expense, and profit calculator spreadsheet. So it's built in Google. It's how I keep track on an ongoing basis my revenue coming in, my expenses, my profit, my annual average for profit percentage, and then it's got all of year to date, and it's automatically getting tracked when I enter in monthly information. So when I enter in monthly income, when I enter in monthly expenses like fees and Etsy ads and any subscriptions that I might have, it's taking that and calculating all of the profit, and then it's then dumping that over to the summary and the dashboard so that I can see those calculations at a glance. I also have an Etsy profit calculator built in there. I use this sometimes instead of Etsy Hunt if I'm already in here, or if I'm considering making changes to my prices, I can simply add in different numbers, make changes. Anything highlighted in yellow is where you can edit, and everything else automatically calculates based on the formulas and initial information that I have built in there. I invite you to check it out if you're not already part of my Patreon group, and if you're not, that's okay. There are plenty of options out there. Just make sure that you find something that works for you so that you can keep track of your shop's finances. Now it's time to get ready for opening your Etsy. I want to have you prepared in a couple different ways because these will help reduce your chance of getting a new shop suspension. If that sounds scary, it's okay. It does happen a lot to new shops, especially those that are connected to print on demand, because the Etsy bots think that sometimes these accounts are spam, and it's an automated thing. So don't panic if it does happen. You are able to reach out to Etsy and they will reactivate it. However, from my past experiences, the way to be able to prevent this from happening is by taking a couple of steps to be prepared when you are opening your shop. The first of these is to create some basic shop images and have those ready. So things like a banner, a logo. They don't have to be super fancy, just something simple that's ready to go that will work for your shop to get it open and up and running. You can easily make these in Canva. They already have the templates ready to go. You just need to pop in your business name or shop name that you're hoping to use and have those ready. I also recommend having a couple sentences ready that you can use for an about section and a shop announcement section. Again, these don't have to be super extensive or detailed, just something that you can plug in and have ready to go when you're ready to open your shop. Again, these just help to establish your shop as being legitimate and avoid those pesky Etsy bots. Now the fun part, it's time to set up shop. Even if you already have an Etsy account for making purchases, I recommend setting up a brand new login specifically for your shop with a different email address. So click the register button and create your login with your email address, name, and password, and then click on the register button. This has created a regular Etsy account. In order to turn it into a seller account, head up to the profile icon and then click on sell on Etsy. Then smash that get started button. And now we're going to follow the prompts that it gives us. The first few questions are introductory, so we're just going to answer them and follow along. And then we'll start to build our shop. First, you'll set up your shop preferences. So this is your language, country, and currency. And now you're going to name your shop. This is where I mentioned that you want to have 2 to 3 options kind of set aside as ideas because your first selection might be taken. Etsy will also prompt you with some suggestions and options, so you'll see those pop up too. Once you've got one that works, go ahead and save and continue. At this point, Etsy is going to ask you to create your first listing. Because we're going to integrate this with our print provider for our listings, I don't actually put in a real listing for this first one. So I just grab a dummy image to plop in just as a temporary space holder. I fill out some basic list details. Again, this is all just kind of random test stuff that I will go back and deactivate later. It's just enough so that I can get through to the next step. Once you filled out all of the required fields, you'll see exactly what the options will be for the future. So this is kind of a little preview for you. You'll save and continue at the end. And then on the next screen, instead of adding more listings, we're just going to say do this later. And then you'll want to head over to your email and confirm your account just to get that out of the way. Then you're ready to click on your shop manager. Etsy will then ask you to set up your payment account so that you can get paid by Etsy. As you scroll through, it's going to ask you about tax information and whether you're an individual or business. If you've registered your business, you can select that. Otherwise, most people use individual. And then you'll fill out all of your personal information in the boxes that it asks for. When you get to the bottom part where it's how you'll get paid, you'll see a prompt and it's going to ask you for your banking information, and then it's going to ask you if you want to verify that through their automatic Plaid platform or manually. I personally went the manual route, which does take a couple extra days because you have to verify amounts they submit with your bank. So you get kind of this pending message in the yellow box while that's happening. But follow the prompts and that should work well. Some sellers have had issues with the instant Plaid method, so that's why I like the manual. And then you'll be setting up all of your billing information, and so this is where I use my business credit card for that part. But as soon as everything is verified, your shop will be open for business. But we're not done yet. There's still some key setup pieces that you'll want to be aware of and take care of right away. The first thing I did was set up my profile picture for me as the owner. This is not my shop logo. This is for me as the owner of the shop. And then from our shop page, we're going to click on Edit Shop. This brings us to our shop manager view and we can start making changes to how it looks. First, I'm going to add a banner. I like to use the big banner. It's what I created over in Canva from their template. So I'm going to click on design and then I'm going to select the design that I already created from Canva earlier. If you don't have one, now's the time to make one. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect for this first pass. You can always change these at any time, but once it's ready to go, you can hit save. Then you're going to do the same thing and change out your shop icon. Again, we created this in Canva earlier, so we've got it ready to roll. Add that in, let it load, and then click on save. And then you'll click on looks good if you're happy with it. Next up, we're going to head to the shop title. This is a small little tagline. You only get one sentence and it's pretty short, but it's a great little spot where you can also describe your shop and sneak in some good keywords. Again, we can always come back and change this at any time, so let's plug some information in here just to start with. And then click on save. Moving right down the list, and I usually add in a location, so I type in where I live, and so that will pull up from the list, and then I click save. Things still look a little bare at the moment, and that's okay, we will get there. And so next we're going to add in a shop announcement. This is a great place to introduce your shop and also, again, sneak in some more keywords that are going to be great for the audience that you're trying to attract to your shop. I also use this during holidays to have any deadlines and things like that, as well as any social media handles that you might feel like including here too. Click on save and then let's keep going. As we continue scrolling down on our shop page, you can see that there are other areas that we can include, such as videos for our shop as well as photos. I typically come back to these along with the story and headline. Again, these are great places to continue adding more information about your business. Next up is shop policies, and we're going to start with the simple policies that Etsy has available as a template. First up is returns and exchanges. If you click on the little pencil to edit, you can see what the options are. Since we're working with a printing partner, I typically turn off my returns and exchanges and do not offer them as my outward-facing policy, but it's entirely up to your personal preference. And then you'll click on save and apply. And then we'll head on over to the cancellations tab to set that policy. We're going to click on create policy, and then for cancellations, I do typically turn those on and allow customers to cancel within a few hours of ordering. You'd be surprised at how many people accidentally place an order when they've got multiple things in their cart. Then we'll hit publish. And the next tab is the privacy policy. I don't ship to the European Union. If you do, it is required, and so you'd want to set that up. Otherwise, I usually just skip it. And the last tab on fixed policies is just informational on what Etsy already communicates. Another area that I recommend setting up is frequently asked questions. This is the place for all of those questions that you get over and over again in messages from customers. If you're new to Etsy, here's a couple hints on what those questions will probably be if you haven't gotten them already. One is around sizing, so I communicate that all of my shirts are unisex and true to size, and that I also include sizing charts in all of my listing photos. Another one is gift messaging and packaging, so I use that one to communicate that because I work with a printing partner, I'm not able to offer any sort of gift messaging at this time. And then I also use this as a place to reiterate care instructions, especially for direct-to-garment printing and how they should be handled with washing and drying. Another really common question is delivery guarantees. I always communicate that I cannot guarantee delivery by a certain date, nor do I offer expedited shipping, just because it doesn't always work out very well. So I just don't do either of those, and I make sure that I communicate that here as well as in any sort of questions that I get from customers as well. What you're really trying to do in this section is to help set expectations and answer any common questions for your customers. The next place that I go once I'm setting up is under settings and options. There are a few different things here. I leave the rearrange disabled, and then custom order requests, because I do want to allow personalization and allow people to make requests. I leave that enabled. I disable gift wrapping, and I disable offering gift messages, since I can't do that with print on demand. Translations, I leave that alone as enabled. And then sold listings, change that to no, hide them so that your competition can't see your sold listings. Then go ahead and hit save. And the final place I go for Etsy setup is under settings and info and appearance. And this is just a couple housekeeping things. If you need to ever change your banner or logo, here's the place to do it. If you want to connect your Facebook, this is the place to do it. If you need to change your shop announcement at any point, you can easily do that from here as well. But the reason I came here is to make any edits or add in a message to buyers. So I've added in reminders that deliveries are estimates. I also use this as a place to make note that they will ship from one of our partners within a week, and to reach out to us directly on Etsy if they should have any concerns along the way. Once your shop is ready and up and running, you can now integrate it with print on demand. So now it's time to integrate. As I've said before, I use Printify as my preferred printing partner. So once I've created an account with them, I'm able to go in and select the integration that I want to have with my store. In this case, it's an Etsy shop. So we'll click on Etsy for integration, and then it will prompt us to log into our Etsy shop account. Once you're logged in, then it'll ask you to grant access for Printify to connect to your shop. And yes, all of these things are necessary because the two shops need to be able to talk to each other. Once you're connected, you'll get a success banner, and then you're all set. So then you can navigate to your Etsy shop from the Printify navigation. It'll show up by default as my Etsy shop. I typically go into the settings then and change the store name to whatever my shop name is. That way, when a customer receives the package, that's what will appear in most cases. The other change that I make is the ship from address. Now, by default, it's going to be the Printify address that's used from the shipping facility. I change that to custom address, and I change it to mine. For me, I actually have a PO box for business use, and so I use that. You could also use your home address, but this ensures that if there is a return to sender, in most cases, as long as the printer is using your address, it will come back to you and not get sent back to the printer in cases when there's an address issue or something can't get delivered. The other important setting that you'll want to take care of when you first set up is order routing. The first part, I actually do not enable order routing. That is what would happen if a print provider can't fulfill an order. It would automatically go somewhere else. I want to have control over that, so I do not enable that part. The other one is order approval. I set that typically to run either within 24 hours or I turn it off so that I have to manually push orders through. If you're new to the process, then I would leave off automatic fulfillment and have it set to manual so that you can see what it looks like before it processes. Once you get comfortable with it, then I typically have it set to 24 hours, meaning that after 24 hours, it will then go into production with the printer. And that's just for automatically going into production. I actually typically will push them through on my own once a day. And then you are ready to create your first product and start selling. Remember, if you've been following along with this course, your homework in Module 4 was to batch and have ready 5 designs based on the products and niches that you already identified. So now let's use all of that knowledge and things that we've learned and prepared for and make an actual product. product. So with our design in hand, we're going to head to Printify and select the product that we're going to use for this design. In this case, I'm going to start with a crew neck sweatshirt, the favorite Gildan 18,000 that I use for most of my products. And then I'm going to select which print provider that I want to use. My personal favorite is SwiftPod just because of the color offerings and the good pricing that they offer. And so we click on Start Designing, and then we're going to upload our design. And then we can select which colors we want to have for this print available for customers to pick from. I recommend only picking a handful so that customers don't get decision fatigue. And then I come up to this prices and variants, and I go to size, and I actually uncheck the 4XL and 5XL. And the reason that I do this is so often these are out of stock and not available for so many printers. And so I don't want to disappoint a lot of customers by having it available and having them always be out of stock. And so once I've done that, then I'm going to adjust my design and make sure that I've got it in a good position, I've got it centered or wherever I need it to be. Typically, I will adjust the sizing so that it takes up the center portion of the shirt, and then I move it to the top of the outline box to make sure it's within the design area and so that it's right below the collar line. And then I will look at previews to make sure it looks exactly the way I am expecting it to, and then I will save that. And then you will be on the product page. Now, some sellers prefer to make these changes in Etsy, but I like to do them here. So I'm going to add in a title using the keywords that I've already done the research on. And we'll want to make sure that we're using long tail keywords at the beginning of our title. And then for the description, I actually like to have that saved in another file so that I can just copy and paste exactly what I want in the description. So for mine, I usually like to have a couple sentences in the beginning introducing what it is, again with keywords. I usually then include some of the basic care instructions and what type of sweatshirt or apparel that it is. And then again, I include what type of processing or printing is used for the item and a reminder that slight variations can occur. Next, we get into pricing. And with this one, there are lots of options. So because we're using SwiftPod, they tend to vary by color and size the pricing on their items. So to keep things super simple, what I do is I select all of the sizing and I set a profit margin of either 60 or sometimes 65%. This will then set a retail price based on that for all of the variations in color and size. You can also set them individually at a flat amount. You can set all of them to the same flat amount, or you can set it so that you have a specific profit dollar amount for each item. And a reminder, you should be using an Etsy profit calculator to figure out exactly what your target retail price should be so that you're getting it right here. Printify does not take into account in this number any Etsy fees or discounts that you're planning on offering. You need to figure that out beforehand so that you know exactly what you should be setting here for your retail price. Then we're going to keep scrolling down into store details. We don't want to hide in store. And then for variant and visibility, we'll select that top one because we want them all to show as available. And then if you have already created your shipping profile in Etsy, you can select that. Otherwise, leave it as create new shipping profile, and we can always change that later. These shipping profiles are actually originated in Etsy, so if you don't have any set up, selecting the default means that it's going to use whatever the pricing for shipping is for that item in Printify. For this first one, I'm actually going to hit save as draft because I want to go ahead and set that shipping profile first, and then it's ready to go for this product and then all other future products with this print provider. So I'm going to pop over to my Etsy shop and go to settings and then shipping settings. We're going to create a profile here in Etsy for this shipping. And then from here, one of the first things that we'll need is an origin zip code. And so that is going to be our printer. And so usually what I do is I just go to Google, and we're using SwiftPod. So I'll just type in SwiftPod address, and then I'm just going to grab whatever the zip code is that it says is associated with SwiftPod. I'm going to copy that, and then I'll come back into the shipping settings, and then I can go from there.
So I'm going to use a fixed price and add that in manually. I'm going to paste in the zip code for my print provider. For processing time, I set this for at least 1 to 2 days longer than what my print provider says it is. So I'm going to use 2 to 6 business days for production. And then for the standard shipping, I like to set this to other so that I can manually change the delivery time to 3 to 6 business days. And then this gives me an extra buffer in case anything happens and there is a delay. I also set up free shipping for mine. Again, I have built in pricing into my pricing structure to account for and allow free shipping. Make sure you're figuring that out as part of your price. If you want to add in price, that's the place to do it. So then you want to name your profile so that you know what it is. So I usually say Printify and then SwiftPod and then click Save Profile. So then when you come back over to Printify, click on the product. When we scroll all the way down, you'll see that when we uncheck that Create New, we now have our Etsy shipping profile available. So we can select that and then hit publish. That will sync, and as soon as it's synced to Etsy, this little publishing icon will turn green and say published. I usually give it a few extra minutes, and then you can head to Etsy, refresh your listings, and it will show up. If you get a gray box like this, it means that it's still syncing. Give it a few more minutes, refresh your screen, and then it will appear. And now you're ready to start editing. So the first thing that I do is I clear out all of the mockups that came from the print provider, because by the time I get to this point, again, I want to make sure I have my designs and mockups ready to go when I list. So I've got all of those saved off in one file. They take a couple minutes to load, so while they are downloading into Etsy, I'll edit the rest of the listing. So I'll start with the title, and typically I would add on a little bit more to this just to fill out those 140 characters. I'm going to change this about section to another company or person because I do have production assistance with this. You can then fill out any of the color information if you'd like related to the design. And then for sweatshirts, I always change this to a long sleeve and pullover. You'll select a clothing style if you have one. A lot of mine are considered more preppy, so I select that. This is a Valentine's Day design, so I'll select that option. There's not a specific graphic for this one since it's mostly words, so I skipped it. And then I typically set renewal to automatic. Some people prefer manual, and that's okay too. Then, once all of the mockups are done loading, I will rearrange them at the top depending on what I want as that first picture. And then I also make sure that my size chart is included in there as well. For the first picture, I will typically adjust it so that it's zoomed in and the design is clear and looks correct on the screen. And this will be the view that customers will see as they're scrolling through search results. So I want that first picture again to look really nice. Then we'll scroll back down and finish out our listing. So because we are getting production assistance, we have to include a production partner. So for this one, you'll only create it once per printing partner. So I name them based on who I use. So I typically fill in Printify, and then in this case, SwiftPod. And then I turn off the ability for customers to see that name and just use a generic printing partner terminology for the listing. Then, because I know SwiftPod, based on our Google search earlier, is in San Jose, California, I filled that part out with the location so that it can provide accurate shipping times for customers. And then in the About Production Partner, I usually just put a sentence or two in there that explains how I use them for fulfillment of items that have my unique designs on them. There's a couple questions at the bottom that you'll fill out. For these, I don't have the technical ability or equipment for the first question. For the second question, I design everything myself. And for the third question, I use the option that they do everything for me. So we'll save that, and now it'll be saved in there as an option every time we create a listing, and we can select that box. The first time you create a listing, you won't have any sections, so I usually just create them here as I go. For now, I just created a generic section called sweatshirts. Typically, I will use this as a place to include keywords, so I might down the road have one specifically for German Shepherd dog shirts or something like that. One little trick that I use for tags is I will actually copy the title from the top and paste that into the tags area and then hit enter. Anything that is automatically less than 20 characters, it will save it as a tag, and then it'll allow me to change any longer tags if I need to break them up and then add additional ones. I do try to use all 13 tags when I can. Again, make sure that you're doing your research on this and using strong keywords relevant to the listing and relevant to your target niche or audience. We talked about this in the SEO module, so if you still need some help with that, head on back to module 3 so that you can review that. Once you've got all of your tags filled out, I usually don't do a whole lot for materials in this case. Our inventory and pricing is already coming over from Printify, and if you need to make any changes, you can always edit variations here, but typically I leave that alone. And what I am doing though is I am linking photos to colors so that when a customer selects from the drop-down list the color that they want for their shirt, it matches one of the pictures so they can see which color it is. So I match each of the colors to one of the pictures that clearly and accurately shows the color of the shirt and save that. We've already got our shipping profile in there, so that's done. The final step is just to make sure that our correct policy is selected for returns and exchanges. After that, you're going to hit publish. You might get an error like this. Just hit publish again and it'll be fine. And that is all there is to publishing your listings. Now, I want you to keep going. As I talked about in the design module, one of my tricks to scaling faster is to use batching. So that is one option on how to get more listings up within your shop. That is certainly one option that you can start working on for good practice. Either way, I want you to keep going and listing, because that is how you will continue to practice and learn and start to understand what works well within Etsy for selling.
And now, in my best Midwest girl voice, this is the moment when we say, oh, for geez. And that is when we get an order, because our first thought is, now what? Don't panic. The process is super simple, especially if you were set up with Printify. Let's take a look.
Once you're logged into your Printify account, head up to the orders tab and you'll see that you've got orders sitting at on hold. This is where they will show up. You can certainly click into them if you need to make edits, or if someone says, oops, I need to change my address, or if you just want to see more information. Otherwise, typically all I do is either individually click on the submit order button on each line, or if you've got several orders, you can click the select all button at the top and click submit. And that's it. It's literally the easiest part of the whole process. Once the orders start processing, you'll see that they go into production. And then as soon as they have a tracking number, Printify will show them as being complete. And they will send the tracking number automatically over to Etsy. You don't have to do a thing.
And that is all there is to it, folks. So now it's a matter of continuing that process and adding more listings, because remember, we've gone through and we've established the strong, confident foundation with our products, our pricing strategy, our SEO and keyword optimization, and our design and mock-up process. The purpose of that was to get confident with these basics so that we can now continue on and start building on that with additional levels of support, with things like consistency, again, adding more products, making updates, adding value to our shop, and of course, driving traffic to our shop. So those are the modules that are to come. I'm super excited to share all of that knowledge with you so that we can work on setting your shop up for long-term success. Make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you next time.